think the sitting has been going well, at least for me. I'm not going to complain about it. So thank you so much for those talks. Like I said, I'm particularly interested and passionate about accessibility, so I love seeing others here advocating for it and talking about the nuances and intricacies of this area. And based on our questions, there's other people who are also quite interested in this area. So one of the first questions that came in regarding the accessibility statements for the European Accessibility Act, if there are no known accessibility issues on the website, is the accessibility statement still needed?
I don't believe that. Working with accessibility, I haven't seen a website ever that doesn't have a single accessibility issue. It might be that it's not been audited properly. But if that would happen, you could still have the accessibility statement there and just tell that you're perfect. Way to go there. But still, I don't believe it.
And I think that you are still required to have it, right? Like even if, let's imagine that this happens.
Yeah. And then because you should always provide the place for accessibility feedback, you should provide the information to the supervising authority, and also, those kinds of things, the accessibility statement is the right place for. So it's still good to be there.
Great. Yes, I would greet that with the same amount of skepticism. Yes. But a question here that I have struggled with myself, and I'm sure many other people in here have, based on all the thumbs up reactions, is how can I convince the UI team, the design team, that icon-only buttons and UI elements aren't obvious to everybody? How do I get away from this design pattern in context of the accessibility of icon-only elements?
Well, I would say always think that you have your grandma next to you. She would have a lot of questions relating to the buttons, and then also, or the icons, but also there are some cultural differences. Different things and images mean different things in different cultures, so it's just double checking. And then there's also the benefit from the visible label of, it's just, making sure that everybody knows what to do. And then I think there's some screen reader benefit, right? So it reads out loud the function of the button.
Yeah, for that particular one, yeah. Yeah, I think well, first of all, I hear where the person who asked this is coming from, because I've had a lot of discussions with designers and trying to debate on different decisions, if they are accessible and if we could actually do them in an accessible way. And unfortunately I've lost many times these debates, so that's an unfortunate thing. But one thing that I've found working, not in every instance and every time, is actually bringing real stories, telling real stories of the people. Of course, I can personally tell some stories because, well, some things, when they are inaccessible for me, I can tell my story. But then there are other stories to tell, and finding, for example, users who have problems with that one design pattern. It's usually people usually, when we are sort of forced to encounter other people, we tend to be more empathetic. Yeah, that word is really hard, but there's usually empathy. No, I'm not even gonna try. Sorry. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's my answer here.
Terrific. Yeah, I've learned that the more you think about people and less about users, it's easier to bring more empathy into your software development. I think the last question we're going to cover here, and why I'm saying this is the last, is this is definitely hella open-ended. But in my experience, you're not alone, whoever asks this. In my experience, many devs, design teams, all know that accessibility is important, yet the product at the end of the day is very rarely accessible, compliant to even single A, much less double, triple A standards. Why do you think this is? What are the most common reasons behind this phenomenon?
One thing might be that accessibility has not been there from the beginning, which is always a big thing. And then also, maybe if the ones who are paying for the service don't know about accessibility, and it really takes time sometimes to make those changes and make good accessible code. If they're not there, if they're not supporting, they might not just, pay for the effort. So those are very common things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like the last years, and of course, like I'm a developer, so I'm looking at this from a developer point of view, and I've been around developers. But I think that like when we've been like generally talking about accessibility, it has been mostly about like technical accessibility, or well, it might have been about the content and everything. But the point of view has been from the from those who are developing, testing, designing, and not that much or not the point of view, but like the target, that's the word I was looking for. So the target has been like devs, designers, testers, and like people around there, like the ones who do the implementation in a sense. But the target has less been about product people or like others on that end of the creating a product line, sort of.
And also one thing to add, one thing that's very common is that there are suddenly so many accessibility experts I've noticed, and they provide a quite big range of services, and the quality is not always the best. So you might have somebody do an accessibility audit, and it's not quite there, which leads to the fact that you're not making it better in the right way. So all of the aspects aren't covered. So even though you would make the audit, you would make some changes, the result would not be accessible because there's been flaws in the process, let's say it that way.
You mean someone is trying to capitalize on a law in a business, whether they're qualified for it or not?
Yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately, yes.
Okay, that's...
And it's very hard as a customer, when you're buying accessibility services, it's very hard to determine whether you're buying it from an actual expert or from somebody that's not that familiar with the subject.
So to follow up on that, if you are part of an organization and you're looking to acquire an expert level accessibility audit to become compliant for the upcoming act, what would you look for in a provider who offers an accessibility audit? What would you look for from them to reassure you in your decision making that you're getting the quality audit that you're expecting?
I would ask a lot of questions. I would ask what the background of the testers or auditing people is, what kind of projects you've done, what kind of customers you have, what kind of references you have, and the quality of the references is the biggest thing. And also if they can be open about their process, if they can show some form of report, some example report, those are the things that can make you more convinced, even though if you wouldn't be an accessibility expert yourself.
Yeah, and I think the price is like a good giveaway because if it's really cheap, it usually is not quality, unfortunately. And if there is something like you can get this thing for free, it's usually not quality. So that's like an unfortunate thing, and I'm not trying to trash anyone here or anything, but that's just an unfortunate fact that I've noticed as someone who is, I'm not auditing myself. I'm just fixing issues, and then I get to see these audits and like those kind of things, and because I have like the knowledge, I'm an expert, I also can look at those audits that, okay, like this is not enough, and I know, and I can like, well, there's a good word for that, like, well, review the results, or like, I know if they are quality. So like, that's like, pricing is a good giveaway as well.
And that's because accessibility testing requires manual testing. That's what makes it high quality, and that's why it's also more expensive compared to like automated testing, which finds only a small portion of the problems.
It makes me think of the classic accessibility overlay, making things like guaranteed 100% accessibility, and it's like, what does that even mean? But yeah, lawsuits are taking care of that for us. So on that note, we have quite a few other questions. Will you two be hanging around the conference the rest of today?
At least for the lunch. I will have to slide away, but you can always send me a message on LinkedIn or whatever, and I'll try to answer it.
Yeah, I will be here longer, so.
Awesome. So if we did not get to your question, I encourage you to come speak to them while you're walking around the hallway today. I'm sure they'd be happy to engage and talk more about accessibility with y'all. So with that, let's give another round of applause for Marianna and Eeva.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.